And then there were two. Happy grand final week, everyone. You're watching the round ahead thanks to Coles Nat Edwards, Josh Gabelich and Chad Wingard with you as we dive straight into the 2025 Toyota AFL Grand Final. Geelong featuring yet again an incredible fifth grand final, if you can believe it, for coach Chris Scott. They take on the reigning premier in Brisbane, who are, of course, searching for back-to-back flags. So as we know, these two sides met in a qualifying final just a few weeks ago. It was the Cats who got the chocolates. But when it comes to a qualifying final rematch in a grand final, Josh, it would appear that history is on the Lions' side.
It certainly is, Nat, because this has happened 5 times under the current top 8 system dating back to 2000. 4 times the loser in week 1 in the qualifying final has atoned 3 weeks later. Although most recently in 2018, West Coast beat Collingwood twice in that final series to go all the way. So history is on Brisbane's side and a lot is on the line clearly this Saturday.
So as always in grand final week, the headlines are usually dominated with selection dilemmas and injuries. And 19 days ago, well, we thought two-time Brownlow medalist Lachie Neale's season was over after he injured his calf in that qualifying final loss to the Cats. They said 4 to 6 weeks, that was the prognosis. And now by some miracle, it appears, Josh, that he is in the frame for a return. Is he going to play?
I believe he will play, Nat. We didn't just think that. Brisbane told us that. Danny Daly told us that. They expected him to miss the rest of the final series, but he looks good to go. Got through a light training session yesterday. We'll need to train down in Melbourne tomorrow. He's travelling with the team today. But from the moment he got through an 8K session at 8 a.m. at Gosh's Paddock on Saturday morning in Melbourne,
ridiculous.
He was on track to play, which is quite remarkable because he was done. He was no chance after that qualifying final. There was a glimmer of hope ahead of the semi-final because of the gains he made that week, and all of a sudden he's in the frame to play in a grand final.
Is it too much of a risk though? Because his body breaks down regularly, and on grand final day, you can't take out injured players.
Well, unfortunately, I've done a lot of calves in my time, and I have gotten back quick, but you do have that high risk of doing it again. And yes, you can train, but nothing, I suppose, equates to a grand final, a match simulation. So it'll be interesting to see. It will be a huge risk for Brisbane, but again, do they play him as sub Josh, or do they start him on the field and just know that he might have to come off early? Well,
that's something that they have been discussing this week. So you can't rule out him being used as the sub to start that game. But as we saw in the prelim, Nat, you might be needed calling your sub very, very early in the Scott Pendlebury situation.
You might. And Lachie Neale has been the sub in a grand final, 23-13 when he was playing for Fremantle. Jared Berry will be out of that side, of course, with that shoulder dislocation. But another heartbreak story is Geelong's Tom Stewart. He is already a premiership player, but that's not going to soften the blow for him. He won't play due to concussion, and while it is a huge loss for the Cats, history also suggests that they can win without him because Geelong has won 11 of its past 14 games without Tom Stewart. While we're on the topic of heartbreak stories in grand final week, a couple of players who have experienced that in the past but perhaps have a chance for redemption are Geelong's Max Holmes and then Brisbane's Oscar McInerney. Chad, will start with Max Holmes, who missed the 2022 flag after injuring his hamstring in the prelim final. We see that there. He is so crucial to this Geelong side. What a story this could be if he manages to win a flag.
Yeah, exactly. A massive story. But what he's gone under the radar this year, and it's mainly because of Bailey Smith. I mean, you think about Max Holmes, he's second in their disposals at the club, but he's number 2 at their score involvements as well. So he plays a massive part of their ball movement. And you think about Jeremy Cameron's number 1, obviously, because he's obviously kicked a lot of goals, but obviously set up a lot as well. So you think about Max Holmes, you think about depth at their midfield, impact up forward, and just a player that's gone under the radar, gets the job done. 190 centimetres, like he can do it all.
He certainly can. Big O is the other one. Josh, he stole the show, I think, on grand final day last year, just in terms of the way that he handled it and the celebration with Darcy Fort, who replaced him as ruck in that premiership last year. He's just such a humble human being. Look at that.
He was incredible. I mean, he handled himself with such class and grace on that day. You can imagine the private heartbreak for him because he played 25 of the first 26 games last year. He'd been integral to this build under Chris Fagan, arrived at the club only a couple of weeks after Chris Fagan was appointed in 2016. He was part of that Hugh McCluggage, Jared Berry draft intake at the end of 2016, and got the chance to speak to him in the rooms after the preliminary final, and he labelled last year as feeling a bit like a fraud because he didn't want to be the story. Unfortunately, he was the story, but he did point out that he wasn't the only one that missed out last year. Darcy Gardner was part of that, who will get an opportunity to get a premiership this weekend. But what a story it is for Oscar McInerney to get a chance at redemption.
Yeah, I think I'll be rooting for him on grand final day. 2 Irish Cats, however, who are going to have a big say in the result either way on grand final day are Mark O'Connor and Oisin Mullen. We see the luck of the Irish there, and in the qualifying final against the Cats, it was O'Connor who went to Cam Rayner, and Oisin Mullen, as we know, kept Hugh McCluggage to 14 touches. Josh, do we think that Chris Scott sticks with these matchups?
Oh, it's going to be a great talking point, isn't it? Because if you go back to last Friday night, Chris Scott did pull a surprise. We thought John Newcombe might get one of these players in that matchup, given his form across the first 2 weeks of September. Instead, Oisin Mullen went to Nick Watson. Nick Watson kicked one of the goals of the year, but aside from that, he had 4 disposals on the night. Mark O'Connor went and did a great role on Josh Weddle.
Crazy.
Quite incredible. So I wouldn't be shocked if Chris Scott does something out of the ordinary. Whether it's a Zach Bailey, who's been a sensation this year, especially last weekend with those 2 goals and 20 disposals. So you'd think you'd stick with the Oisin Mullen, Hugh McCluggage tag.
I want to take a look at 2 veterans now who have been to grand finals before. They've experienced the highs and, of course, the lows. Patrick Dangerfield is 35 and Dane Zorko is 36, and what they are producing in the twilight of their careers is quite incredible. And Chad, Chris Scott said after the game that Danger was born to play finals. We saw that in the prelim because he was incredible against Hawthorn, and he's going to have a big say, isn't he, on grand final day?
It's actually getting a joke at this point, like how good he is at 35. I still believe that he's the most explosive player I've ever witnessed on an AFL ground. He's the quickest player to get off the deck every time. His speed, his endurance, he's just a player that can do anything and everything. It's actually frustrating last week as a Hawthorn player, but to see someone at his age lift the team the way that he does, he's unbelievable. And like I said, I can't wait to see him play, and I think he's going to have big moments again.
Zorko is a polarising player at times, Josh, but when he is on, he is on.
Well, he wasn't on early, wasn't he? Because he contributed to the first 4 goals for Collingwood in that first half on Saturday, but he redeemed himself after half-time. He's actually had a great final series when you look at his numbers across the first 3 weeks of September. Finished with 28. Did cop a $5,000 fine for tearing Mason Cox's goggles off as well. But look at this moment with the coach. I mean, to think, we just spoke about Patrick Dangerfield at 35. Dane Zorko's 36. He's had a renaissance at the back end of his career across halfback, and he could have a second premiership medal.
He certainly could. Well, it's time now for the grand final edition of Lloydie's Lens. Lloydie, welcome to you, and I believe you want to talk about Dane Zorko too.
I do, because it's the aggressive ball move of the Brisbane Lions that they don't shy away from. It doesn't work sometimes, it works others, and it's got them to another grand final. But these are the moments, this is the type of situation that will be won and lost. So you look at the Geelong setup, it's very good defensively. It's Dane Zorko's over here, and he says, I don't care. Wilmot says, I don't care. I'm going to take that on. So this is the fine line of this grand final. So you see this kick, Jack Bowes, that is the fine line. If he stops that, well, then Myers is away. If he misses it, well, then Brisbane are away. So in this situation, Brisbane get away with it. And I admire Brisbane for doing it. Bailey gets it because of that kick that they're piercing. So goes through, and because of that aggressive ball movement from Zorko, they get a goal. Just like this one. They're off and they're away. Zorko involved. They run, they carry. Bailey, that man again. Ashcroft's away. And because of that ball movement, no one can stop that. And you get a situation where O'Connor doesn't want to be in that situation up against Cameron Rayner. But I want to show the flip side, Nat and Josh and Chad, where it can go wrong. So the same situation where Geelong are so good at cutting off the corridor. So here is Calamarchi. We all know where he wants to go. So look at those eyes. So you read the eyes and the cues of the kicker. And you want to say, where do I cut that off? The same man, Jack Bowes. That is the same play. But in this situation, it's cut off. Look at Bailey Smith. He's queuing up. Geelong are forward of the ball. And that's where I'm big on Geelong, because they cut it off so well. So again, there's another play where it's balls in dispute. As the game wore on, Geelong are the best red time in the comp. Look at these Brisbane players. They couldn't run with Geelong for 4 quarters. So Geelong are away. Jack Martin gets out the back. So I think Geelong have more to them. Brisbane go, go, go. But I think Geelong can win in many different ways.
Lloydie, we've been seduced by the Logan Morris story. Everyone knows that he was taken at pick 31. What he's done in his first 2 years, a premiership player in year 1, and now 52 goals in year 2 has been quite incredible. But I love the Ty Gallup rise in the back end of the year.
Yeah, it's another one where I look at the first final where didn't contribute, 6 disposals, 1 goal against Geelong, and Gallup had 8 disposals and didn't score. versus the prelim. They got 4 goals out of them and 24 disposals versus the first final where they didn't really contribute. So against Collingwood, I'm going to show the best of them, but this is another question mark that I have on Brisbane. Sam Day also played in that first final and didn't contribute, Chad. So big ask for a 5 or 6 game player, and Logan Morris, who we're asking a lot of him. And it's why I trust Geelong, and I keep coming back to Geelong, because I think if Jeremy doesn't have the biggest game, Geelong can still win, but I think they need a lot from Logan Morris. But here's Jeremy Cameron. Ryan Lester, I've never seen him so flustered. 2 goals, 3 in the first quarter. So this was just a domination where he just had his hands up in the air going, I can't handle this guy. So full credit to Darcy Gardner. So this is where Gardner went to him after this play. Darcy Gardner went to him and beat him. So Gardner will start on him. But I'm not sure Gardner's legs have it in them to go with Jeremy Cameron for 4 quarters. So, and wrapping up Lloyd's lens, Nat, I've got Geelong winning.
Ooh.
I've got winning by about 4 goals.
Okay.
That's 17 points. And Jeremy being unstoppable. I know it's the obvious, but I think he kicks 5+ and wins the Norm Smith.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that battle. I love it. Lloydie, thank you so much for joining us on the round ahead. Thanks to Coles. Now, before we do finish off our grand final preview, we thought we would whet your appetite with the top 5 grand final moments since 2000.
Well done, Scarlett. Still with Franklin, though. Now Jew could kick this, and he has. He's had the best 5 minutes.
Surrounded by Hawks. Strong tackle got him down by Bateman. Hodge. Jew kicks a goal.
He is. Johnson, can he pop it over the top? Ablett somehow has found some space. At the last minute, Zach Dawson spills it, but a clever soccer by Scarlett to Ablett from 80 metres. He drills it long to the tip of the goal square. Big flyers wanted. Barco, handball's over. It's a snap. Butcher.
Hayes, belting forward. Got up. Hayes belting the ball forward. Johnson quickly off the mark. Milner at best. Ball bouncing. Scores a level. What are you doing next week?
Will he give it to Rebold? He will. Rebold runs in. Touched up the boot. He came up behind him like a librarian. He never heard him.
Cox throws it onto the left. One last roll of the dice for the Eagles. Leo Barry-Uster. The longest premiership drought in football history is over.
He plays on. Ball to Sheeds, too long. Maynard can't get there. Sheed from the boundary. Needs to be inch perfect. He is. He's got the most impossible goal.
Some incredible moments there. Now, some conjecture, because there are some Swan supporters in our office who think that Leo Barry-Uster should be number 1. Are we happy that Dom Sheed is that, Chad?
Well, I think Dom Sheed deserves to be number 1. Firstly, if he doesn't mark it, Uster, it might not have been a shot at goal. Like he could have. It's not a guaranteed win, but Dom Sheed, mark on the boundary, left foot. 30 seconds to think about this shot.
Clutch, isn't it?
So it's just the most clutch moment I think I've seen in AFL history. It's unbelievable.
It is ridiculous, a moment that we love reliving, unless you're a Collingwood fan, of course. But time now for Josh's player portrait, the last one for 2025. Josh, who have you got in your sights this week?
Different portrait for grand final week, Nat. The Cats are the masters of mature age recruiting and have been for decades under this man, Stephen Wells. While James Podsiadly was 28 when he finally got his shot at Geelong, Shaun Mannagh waited the longest to be interviewed by a club for the first time. You know the story by now, but how many clubs really looked at him? I've done some digging this week. It turns out Shaun Mannagh was 25 when he first got some interest. The Western Bulldogs met with him weeks before the 2023 mid-season rookie draft. They needed a wingman, so they went with Caleb Poulter instead. 3 months later, Mannagh met with Fremantle days before that famous VFL Grand Final at the end of that season. Lee Montagnier was part of the interview in his part-time recruiting role at the Dockers alongside list boss David Walls. Werribee lost that game, but the then 26-year-old won the Norm Goss medal after kicking 6 goals from 27 disposals at Icon Park. He left for his honeymoon in Europe the very next day, and a week in, Sydney and Essendon reached out for him to test before the draft. He didn't make it back in time for the Swans, but he tested at the hangar the day after he got back from Europe and sat down with Matt Rosa and Rob Forster-Knight from the Bombers, who'd spoken to him across the year. While he was away, Stephen Wells emailed him. Mannagh had reached out to the Cats, to GWS and to the Western Bulldogs at the end of 2022, asking for a trial during the pre-season supplemental selection period. There were no takers then, but 12 months later, Geelong knew they had to move earlier than others on draft night, so they used pick 36 to select the high forward from the Riverina. Fremantle thought he would still be on the board for their last pick at 41, but he wasn't. Now the former Ovens and Murray star has the chance to replicate what James Podliadley did in his second season at the Cats by winning a flag this Saturday.
Thanks, Josh. Well, Shaun Mannagh, could he be a wild card come grand final day? Of course, we know it's a day where heroes are made, and we've got a few wild cards here who might etch their names into premiership folklore and perhaps snag a Norm Smith along the way. Chad, I know you're keen to talk about Tyson Stengel, who I believe is your tip for Norm Smith as well.
Yes, believe it or not, I'm going to finish this episode by going biased again with another small forward. So I think
Shocker.
I just believe Stengels just adds that, I suppose, that small forward prowess, the goal sense. I mean, he's in good form. He's had 15 and 3 goals last week. He kicked 4 goals in the 22 grand final and proved that he's obviously a goal winner, match winner. Elliott kicked 4 goals last week against Brisbane, which just gives me a sense that the small forwards could get off the chain against them. And Bobby Hill, we know what he did in the grand final against Brisbane as well with Norm Smith. So that's enough there to tell me that Stengel has the capabilities and Brisbane might have a bit of a hole there.
And I see you're tipping Geelong to win the flag as well. Did that hurt a little bit?
It did hurt a little bit. It's going with my head this week. I think Geelong will win by about 3 goals.
Josh, who's your wild card, your tip for Norm Smith and your grand final tip?
Well, you know, I'm seduced by a story, Nat, and having spent some time with Shaun Mannagh this week, I'm
you're
going
obsessed.
with Shaun Mannagh. And I'll tell you why. Because not only was he best on ground in the VFL Grand Final in 2023, he was best on ground in the Ovens and Murray Grand Final in 2019. He's got form on the biggest day of all. And you mentioned Bobby Hill, Chad. I think we might see a little bit of a Stevie J replication. He kicked 4 and had 23 disposals back in 2007, and I just don't think you can rule that out with Shaun on Saturday.
Well, everyone's jumping on the Geelong bandwagon, and I'm going to go something different. And Brisbane, for mine, they're my tip, 7 points. And the Norm Smith, well, what about a defender? Because they do not get enough love. And Harris Andrews, not only have we learnt during the week that he is an incredible bloke in the work that he's doing with domestic violence in this country as well, winning the Jim Stynes Community Award, but he is a wall down back. The intercept marking, he is just a general in their backline. And I just think that if Geelong are going to stop the Lions, they're going to have to get through Harris Andrews first. It is a massive week. We absolutely love grand final week. It all starts, if you're a Geelong fan, though, on Thursday night, because the AFLW side, Geelong, is going up against the Hawks. That's at GMHBA Stadium, so make sure you get down there. And it's really crucial. If you do not have a grand final ticket, we have double passes that are going to be given away at 5 AFLW games across Thursday and Friday. All you have to do is rock up to the game, scan your ticket, and you are in the draw to win 2 grand final tickets. How about that? So make sure you get down and support the W. And that is the round ahead, thanks to Coles for the year. Thank you so much for joining us. Guys, it's been so fun doing this with you. So thanks for having me along for the ride.
Very fun. Love Wednesdays.
It's been great.
Enjoy the grand final, everyone. We'll see you next year.